Hello, hello, this is M.E.C, and you're listening to the Well of Being podcast. Today, I wanted to talk about my least favorite feeling. It's the thing that makes me the most uncomfortable. I would say the most unhappy, the most anxious, and takes experiences that I have and ruins them. And I think it's something that we don't think about frequently, but it is something that I have realized feeds into a lot of my mental distress, and that is dread. The whole concept of dread, of not wanting to do something, and feeling a sense of anxiety. Let me Google real quick what dread means, because I think that that's important for us. Dread, according to Oxford Languages, is to anticipate with great apprehension or fear. I just can't stand it. I think I didn't even really realize that I was feeling it in a lot of spaces and that it was affecting me a lot until I kind of voiced it to my therapist. I was like, I just can't stand the thought of doing this, and the concept of getting up and having to expend energy to accomplish this just seems so daunting. And she was like, are you feeling dread? And I said, well, like maybe, like I don't, my therapist tends to be like super on point with that kind of stuff, and I'm often left speechless, which is obviously something that doesn't happen frequently. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, because we don't think about dread. It's something we experience quite frequently, in my opinion. At least I do. And it leaves me immobile and incapable of doing things that I want to do. And it affects me in a very palpable and very obvious way. And yet, I don't think about it at all. I really don't think about it frequently until it's actively happening, and I'm like, ooh, I'm experiencing dread. And then I, reward myself for some self-reflection and for identifying my emotions, which is something I should have learned a long time ago, but still working on it, in progress. We all have room to grow, don't we? So I'm going to break this up into two different types of dread for simplicity. Things you know that you dread, and things you don't know that you dread. I will split these up because this is how I typically tend to process them, and I kind of hate things that you know more, and I'll tell you why. Things that you know, carrying out everyday tasks, things that are obligations that you have, doing homework, getting assignments and projects done, giving presentations, interacting with people who stress you out. So whether that's family, whether that's coworkers, whether that's peers or friends, that can be stuff that you know, things that you have to do, things that you're familiar with, but nevertheless, they stress you out. Things that you have to do to kind of function as an adult. When you don't have the energy, when you're feeling depressed, where you're feeling incredibly anxious, or some sort of other negative emotion that is giving you a lot of mental distress. And then you start to dread doing activities that you know are taking care of yourself, that maybe aren't the funnest things to do. They're not necessarily bad things either by anyone's outward perception. I would not say that taking a shower is a bad thing, but yet when you have no energy and you're depressed and you can't fathom getting up out of bed, taking a shower is actually a very high hurdle. But there is this stigma of being lazy when you're in an episode like this and you can't get basic hygiene things done. I often feel gross, right? I feel icky, and it's not just because obviously I haven't taken a shower or because I haven't gotten out of bed or haven't changed or something in the past day. I'm worried about being perceived as gross or being perceived as lazy. I am an immigrant kid, as I've mentioned a couple times before, and the concept of being lazy or just not being motivated is something that preys heavily upon my identity as an immigrant kid, because I value the sacrifices that my parents made, and so I have made it my mission that I need to either pay them back or move forward or somehow, increase the generational wealth, or it's an internal expectation. It's something that I expect of myself. I have high expectations of myself, and this doesn't just apply to immigrant kids, and the concept of not getting out of bed, not doing things I'm supposed to do, makes me feel bad about myself. So then I feel like I'm making excuses for why I'm not doing self-care tasks. And it's often along a similar vibe of just feeling like, since I can't do this basic thing, I must be bad, or I must be so pathetic that I cannot get up and do a basic task like go and get groceries, or go to the post office and mail this birthday card that I needed to send out like 2 days ago. These are common experiences, perhaps maybe specific to me, but that I am familiar with. I've done them hundreds of times probably. And yet when you don't have the energy, when you feel really exhausted, they feel very daunting, and I start to dread them. And I start to dread them to the point where I cannot do them unless I talk myself through it or I call somebody. And with regards to like tasks or like previous experiences, like maybe you've called somebody and they stressed you the heck out, and you're like, I'm not calling this person anymore. And so every time they call, you get nervous and you're like, I don't want to answer that. I'm going to avoid that. I don't want to, I'm not going to do that. And you dread when they call, or you dread like certain interactions with people. Like maybe it's your boss, or maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's somebody at school who maybe this one time when you interacted with them, it was just so awkward or like weird, or didn't feel right, or you said something that was stupid, and then now you're like, I'm going to say that again. I'm going to ruin this interaction, and so therefore I will avoid this interaction. This interaction is inherently bad, and so I'm going to dread every time I have to see this person, and it's just going to color every interaction moving forward that I have with this person or this thing, because that's how I feel. They are interactions with people that I have come to dread because I either don't have the energy, I'm burnt out, or because I am extrapolating one specific negative experience and applying it broadly to anything that is similar. Sounds familiar? Because that's definitely me. It gets to the point where I have to, develop ways to get out of these spaces, because I have to get work done. Whatever you're doing, there are things you got to do. And when you can't do them, it feels bad. It feels like you're being lazy. And there's actually recently a podcast, I think it was Emma Chamberlain on Anything Goes. And she mentioned like the difference between feeling lazy and feeling burnt out. And she said, like, when I feel lazy, I don't want to do something. And when I feel burnt out, I cannot do something. Like it feels like I physically cannot do it. It's impossible, as opposed to I just don't want to. And so I don't really separate it out quite like that, but I think there's a feeling when you have dread that, oh my goodness, this is insurmountable. I can't possibly go against this. And the way that I've decided to view this is as a roller coaster. I view things like this that I dread as a roller coaster. If you are a person who likes roller coasters, feel free to ignore this, but like maybe it's like the biggest roller coaster ever, and it has like a 96-degree angle drop, and it's super fast, and it's very scary. It goes backwards. Maybe like, I don't know, there's fire on it, whatever. It's a very scary looking roller coaster. Then add on top of that the fact that hundreds of people have probably ridden this roller coaster before in the past. You're seeing people who are riding it right now in front of you in line. You're like, okay, people are surviving on this thing. They're screaming their heads off. Some people are fainting, whatever. They might require medical attention, but they're alive and they're fine. This has been safety checked. We know that this ride is technically safe by somebody's standards, right? They wouldn't be letting people on, and otherwise that would be bad. So I'm looking at this thing. Other people have accomplished this. You see what I'm saying? Other people have gotten on this ride, they've ridden the ride, they've lived. I know it's possible. And yet I'm looking at it, and do you think I want to get on that thing? The answer is no, I don't. I don't want to get on that thing because it looks scary as heck. And I'm looking at it, and it looks like I can't do it. I can't do it. And there are so many times when this happens, right? And people will be like, oh, well, that's okay. That thing is really scary. Well, the thing that is very scary to some people, or that you might be dreading, right, might look different in different spaces. And so if I don't have a ton of energy, if I'm in a depressive episode, sometimes that really scary looking roller coaster can be something as simple as getting out of bed, or having a conversation with your boss or a teacher, or having an interaction that you're dreading, that's the roller coaster. And so that's how I like to view this, because it can often make you feel bad because you're like, oh, well, it's just getting out of bed, or it's just talking to somebody. I feel bad about myself. But when you view it as what it is, it's like, oh, this is my roller coaster. This is my giant, scary looking roller coaster. I can say, okay, I am acknowledging that I'm feeling dread. And I have this dread for a reason. I have this dread because maybe I had a negative experience, maybe because I just don't have a lot of emotional energy right now. Whatever reason it is, I have this dread. I feel it for a reason. This is my roller coaster. People have done this and survived. And I can do this too. And I think that's something that really helps me put things into perspective. Now, on the flip side, I just talked about a lot of things that you know, okay, things that you've done hundreds of times, or maybe people you've interacted with, whatever. Then there's tasks that you dread that are new experiences, things you haven't done before. And that is colored by my favorite friend, uncertainty. I say that sarcastically. I hate uncertainty with every fiber of my being. There are things that we have to experience that are new all the time. Whether it's a job interview, or it's a new opportunity, or going to a new place. Okay? There are new experiences that some people might view as exciting. But then our dread can make this uncertainty turn from exciting to frightening and nerve-wracking. And the worry can envelop you and really make it very difficult to even consider doing these new experiences, or trying new things, or going new places. You don't want to go to a new club, or a new church, or a new place because you're worried that your first impression's not going to be good. You have performance concerns. How am I going to do in front of other people? How am I going to do this? I've never tried this before, but maybe I stink at it. Although noting the fact that most people who try something for the first time are not quite good at it. And that's just kind of how things work. So maybe you've never played golf before, and people invited you to play golf, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to play golf. I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to look so bad. Can't possibly do that. I'm not going to do this new experience. And I'm going to dread every moment. Oh my goodness, getting in the car, driving to the golfing place. I'm going to be panicking, and I'm going to not want to get out of my car, and I'm going to have to pep talk myself to get into the building. And when I rent my clubs, I'm going to feel X, Y, and Z. All of these things are very specific, right? So that's a performance concern. Then there's just doubting yourself, okay? Is this the right decision? When you apply to a new job, if you see a new opportunity, or you want to talk to a person, is this the right decision? Will I do this right? Or should I just not even bother because I don't think that I can do it, or I don't think I can traverse this well? Are you having imposter syndrome? If you're like, yeah, I'm not going to apply to that because I don't deserve it. Or if someone suggests you for something cool, like a cool opportunity, or says you should try this, you'd be really good at it, and you talk yourself out of it, or you start dreading the concept of doing it because you just don't think you're good enough, even though someone else thought that you were good. It's imposter syndrome. And then there's also the lovely, not so small fear of social judgment. We're so concerned about the way that other people will perceive us. I have this phrase that I say when I'm feeling particularly sensitive and silly. We love a sensitive and silly moment. And I say, don't perceive me. Do not perceive me. I think a lot of people on the internet say that too. This is when I'm feeling particularly vulnerable to social judgment. I don't want people to judge me. And so I'm like, you know what, just don't perceive me at this time. And so that's a whole nother sphere of dread that is relating to new experiences. Personally, I find that I get more negative feelings from things I know than things I don't know. I'm supposed to be, quote unquote, bad at new things, right? Like you've never tried it before, so no one is expecting you to be amazing at it. And if they are, I can be like, that's not really a realistic expectation of me. And so that's how I talk myself through the new experiences. But for me, things I know, like when I have difficulty going back to an encounter with a person who maybe I was awkward with, or I said the wrong thing or put my foot in my mouth, I find that really difficult. And so how do I get through it? I'm going to use the experience of grocery shopping. I hate grocery shopping in some spheres. There are certain stores, there are certain parking lots, there are certain places that I do not like going to get my groceries, but maybe they're cheap and I need, affordable groceries and they have the things that I want. And I like groceries that I like to eat, right? And so in periods of time when I feel very depressed, I do not have the energy to go grocery shopping. It really drains me. I find it really difficult to do. And this sounds really silly as I say it, because right now I'm not feeling that dread. But when I'm in that experience and I'm like, I can't possibly go to the grocery store, I will put off going to the grocery store until the fact I'm eating just beans and seasoning, no rice, no extra add-ins. It's just beans. And I'm like, yeah, I need to go to the grocery store. And it typically happens when I'm having, like I mentioned, like an anxiety specific period of time or a depressive episode. And this is what I do because I need to get groceries. I will think about it the day before. I'm like, oh, tomorrow I have to go get groceries. That sounds like it's going to be horrible. I will have dreams about going to get groceries and how stressful it's going to be and how I don't know what I want to put in my cart and how I don't really know. I have to plan out what I'm going to eat for the week and what if I spend too much money and what if blah, 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 blah. Done this pretty well, as you can tell. Here are things that I do. I call somebody to help me. I will get on the phone and call my significant other or call my roommate and say, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want to talk to me as I get there? And that distracts me from the dread I'm feeling about, driving there, parking, finding a parking spot, getting into the store, figuring out what I want, finding a cart, because sometimes the carts are all gone, fighting people over, like a dragon fruit or something, X, Y, and Z. I think about all those things and I make them seem really, really big in my head. And obviously the individual things are not so big, but when I put them all together, there's a ton of negative experiences that I'm perceiving are going to happen. I'm going to assume that every worst case scenario is going to happen. And so therefore I don't want to do them. But when I'm talking to someone else, I'm focused on what they're saying. We're having a conversation. I don't have time. I don't have the attention span to worry about those things. And so it really helps me get the task done because someone's just distracting me or maybe they're talking me through it. I think that that's really helpful. Now, obviously, there are not always times when you can call somebody for help. Some things you need to do yourself, or maybe you're not in a space where you can call someone, and that's okay. I talk to myself. Currently, as I record this podcast, I'm talking to you, but I'm also talking to myself. It's something I'm very good at. I love doing this because I will talk myself through each moment that I'm doing something, and it forces me to be in the moment as I'm doing something. Dread is so easy to do because I'm thinking into the future on what negative things are going to happen. If I am focused on what's going on in the exact moment that I'm at right now, I can't do that because I'm thinking about what I'm doing in this moment. So I'll be like, I'm getting into the car. I'm getting into the car. I'm putting on my seatbelt. And I'm turning on the radio. The air conditioning smells kind of weird, but I'm going to put it on anyway. I'm going to put on my favorite K-pop song. Okay, my K-pop song is playing. I'm putting my hands at 10 and 2 and I'm driving through the garage. I will quite literally walk myself through every small detail that I'm noticing, and I do it out loud. Okay? I do it out loud because it really forces me to focus on what I'm doing in that moment. Because when I'm thinking about all the very small things that I'm taking in, the information, the fact that I said that the air conditioning smelled weird, the fact that I'm putting on K-pop, what does it sound like, the fact that I'm driving through my garage, I am not worrying about all of the things that could go wrong with this grocery trip. That is something that I do. So I mentioned that you call other people to help you support that task. Talk yourself through each moment because there's less time for dread when you're focusing on a task. The third thing is something that my therapist suggested that I do. And it sounds really silly and it sounds really obvious and simple, and you're like, this is a stupid exercise. But it does work, and I have to give her props. It does work. It's called a countdown. You quite literally count down from 3. And when you hit 0, you got to go do the task. Part of it is that when you feel dread, it gives me this certain sense of, I would call it indecision. And the indecision is paralyzing because I know I have to do this thing. I know I need to get this done. And yet it sounds so unpleasant and I don't want to do it. And so I'm tugging back and forth between I need to get this done, but I don't want to get this done. And it's scary to get it done. So what should I do? Should I go and get it done or should I not get it done? And I'm sitting there in my head going back and forth between all these options, and the options are A and B. And so I'm going A, B, A, B, A, B, and I'm actually not making a decision while I'm doing that. So doing the 3-2-1 method forces you to do something. You are acting in some way. You are going from deciding to doing something, and you have to be very specific about how you do this. You're saying 3, 2, 1, you get up right now, and then you go and do it. And what you're doing is you're giving yourself a time limit between when you have to decide. It is not allowing yourself to sit in that indecision space. This is not an easy technique to do. I still struggle with it, but I do find that it's helpful for certain people, and so I wanted to mention it. Dread is hard. And I wanted to talk about it because the past couple weeks I have struggled with motivation, and someone commented on Spotify, I think, and said that something that they were struggling with was low motivation. And I was like, you and me both, my friend. And it made me think about this podcast idea. So thank you to that person. I do read all the comments that you leave and the reviews that you leave, and would love to hear more from you. I'm also about to launch a website for this podcast, thewellbeingpodcast.com, and I'm super excited for it. Been working on it behind the scenes in the past couple of months, and it's quite literally very ready for you to go on and explore and get some resources, and I think that'll be really amazing. So thank you so much. If you have podcast suggestions, or if you have feedback, or if you want to leave a message, feel free to either DM me on Instagram, or you can leave a voice message if you're on Spotify, or you can also go on the website. Whatever floats your boat, you can leave a review and a rating. That always helps. Whatever you want to do. I'm just vibing over here. So I hope that the rest of your day is good, and if it is a little bit more difficult than you were assuming, I hope that tomorrow is better. Thank you so much for listening. This is M.E.C. I'm heading out. Bye.